video goes along with my pattern called the Squid Hat, which I made up, and it was largely inspired by the internet series The Guild. Clara wears it in season 4, and when I saw it I just fell in love with it and decided I wanted to try making one of my own. So I wanted to show you how I did the modified stitch that I used for the suction cups, and I also wanted to show you how I did the seam where I just slip stitch along the side instead of using maybe a yarn needle like some people do. I just don't like all of the tails. So I thought I would show you in case you're very visual like I am and pictures and words don't quite do it justice. So what I have here is the top side that I've already completed. You can see that I haven't cut this yarn. I still want to leave it working because I want to slip stitch it when I get the underside piece completed, and I will sew it together using a slip stitch. So this is still connected to my yarn here, and you can see when you are done and you sew it together, it has a nice set of stitches that just go right along the side as you sew it together using a slip stitch in your crochet hook. So I'll show you how to do that as well once we finish showing you the roundel stitch. So I wanted to show you here that you can see that it's just a cluster of single crochets. There's actually 9 worked into one stitch, and what I did was I used a modified version of the embossed roundels, which you can find in this book called Basic Crochet Stitches, 250 Stitches to Crochet, as edited by Erica Knight. And I found that book very handy. If you don't have it, it might be something you'd be interested in. But anyways, so as we get here, you can see that I've done 5 sets already, so I need my 6th set to finish my arm here. And there's 5 rows of single crochet in between each set. So I've done my 5 rows of single crochet, and I'm ready to do my row that has my roundels in it. So I chain 1 to turn, and I'm going to single crochet 3 stitches. And then in the 4th stitch is where we're going to make our roundels. You're actually going to put 9, like I said, and I'm going to be kind of quiet as I count because I can't talk and do this at the same time. Oops. 5. And as you get to around 5 or so, you can tell that it starts getting difficult to put it in as they get crowded in there. Sometimes I just wiggle it across and you can see that it leaves a little bit of extra room, but also you can just leave the loop as you pull through. You can make this loop just a little bit bigger to compensate. So that's 7, 8, and 9. And then what I do here is it's easiest for me to just count my stitches. Once you've done a couple, you can get kind of visual maybe and know which one is your 9th stitch as you count back. But I take out my hook and I'm going to count back 9 stitches. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I'm going to put my hook from back to front into that stitch 9th back from the one I was working. It's actually your first stitch that you're going to put in this cluster. Then I'm going to put my hook into my working yarn that I had, and I'm going to pull it through the other stitch so it closes this roundel up, and you can see how it kind of pulls it together just like in a circle. So then I will single crochet 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to do another set of roundels in the next stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I have my 9, and again I'm going to count back from my working loop here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Stick it in from back to front. Put it back in my working loop. Pull my working loop through, and there's my next roundel. Then I will stitch into the last 3. And I want to show you this next row too, because sometimes it can be a little tricky to find your stitch since we put so many stitches into one single crochet. The stitch really shrinks up. So I just wanted to show you to make sure that you keep getting 12. You want 12 every time you make a row. So make sure you're keeping up with that, especially when you're making your first couple of arms. Just double check yourself and make sure you're keeping all 12. So as I go along, I know that my roundel stitch is the 4th stitch, but you can see how, this camera isn't very good on zooming in, but you can see how the stitch is kind of hidden by the roundel when you're looking at it. So you want to make sure that you just insert your hook into that. It's a little tight, but you don't want to skip that stitch. So as you come back along to the second roundel, you can see that there's a little pucker in between, and just make sure that you insert your hook into that stitch so that you're picking it up. In the end, you should have your 12 stitches, and just make sure that you continue with the 12. So there's the set of the roundel with the 1 row of single crochet after that. And since I'm at my end, I will finish this off, and then I will show you how I slip stitch the top to the bottom. So what I've got here is I finished my underside and I placed these two together, and I want to sew it together using a slip stitch instead of a yarn needle, just because that's my preference. However you want to do it is up to you. So what I'm going to do is place a slip stitch at the end of each row that I have made. And sometimes it's a little hard to visualize if you haven't done this before, but I'm going to do it at the end of each row. So I can't really zoom in very well, but there's one right here, there's going to be one in the middle here, one right there, one in the middle. There'll be one between each ridge basically that you've made here. So there's really, remember there's a row in between here, so make sure you put a stitch in there. So I just slip stitch, and it begins making kind of like a sewn seam. And as you work around, don't forget to stuff once you get one side and working back up the other. And you also want to pay attention if the ends start curling up, and say yours is starting to go kind of like this, you can tell that you're not matching up the rows correctly, and you may need to undo a couple of slip stitches and try putting them back together, and make sure that you have them lined up, and that also you're doing it maybe in the rows that you're getting in through the same one on each one. And it's as simple as that. Just go through the end of every row. But if you have any questions on this, I'll see if I can help by explaining it. There may be another YouTube video that might show it a little better, since my camera doesn't really zoom in. So if you have any questions, though, you can find me on Ravelry.com, or you can just leave a comment on this, and I'll try to get back with you as soon as I can. Thanks.